You're listening to Someday List, a podcast by TeuxDeux. Every month, we're sitting down with some of our favorite creatives, founders, and entrepreneurs to talk about what they're doing, how they got there, and what they want to tackle next. I'm your host, Evan Leon, and today I'm talking to Dan Toomey, a comedian, writer, and video producer at Morning Brew, a media company with over 4 million subscribers across their lineup of business newsletters. Dan has been integral in building out their video strategy and accumulated millions of views with his short satirical takes on business news. Today we're sitting down to talk about starting his career in the pandemic, marrying journalism and comedy, and preserving your creative well-being. Before we get started, if you're looking for an easy way to get organized, look no further. TeuxDeux is a thoughtfully constrained minimalist to-do list app that is as simple as paper. Because we believe that simple stays organized. TeuxDeux helps you focus on the things you need to get done so you have more time for the things that matter. Start your 30-day free trial at TeuxDeux.com or download the free mobile app. On to the interview. Dan, thank you so much for being here today. How are you doing?
Great to be here, Evan. Oh, I'm good. Just, spend another day sending the worst tweets I can think of into the world.
On the rare chance that someone has not heard of Morning Brew, can you tell me a little bit about what it is and what you do there?
Yeah, Morning Brew for I think the first 6 years of its existence, long before I was there, was the hottest business newsletter on Wall Street, covering everything from Wall Street to Silicon Valley. And since then, we have become more of a media company, which is where I kind of came in to start the whole video program at Morning Brew. And that's what I do there, is I make videos for them. And now we have multiple newsletters. We have a very active social channels. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. We're on YouTube that we're building out right now. So we're more than a newsletter. We're much more than a newsletter. And yeah, that's kind of where we are right now.
Definitely huge presence on socials, on TikTok, which you are a large contributor and reason for that happening. I almost consider you the face of Morning Brew.
Oh God, don't tell. My bosses are going to hear that and be like, we got to turn this ship around. This is not good. When I joined, my job wasn't really to start our TikTok. It was just kind of like to create videos for Morning Brew. But then gradually we just had a good amount of success on TikTok. And, that's where that kind of just started as us just like cranking out videos there and then just like uploading them on other social channels. Because I feel like Instagram now is mostly just like places where the best TikToks get filtered to almost. You know what I mean? Yeah. It feels like it right now. Instagram's feeling a lot like Facebook was when it was like on the decline, which is a shame because I think that there are elements to Instagram that I like as opposed to the other apps.
It is a shame about Instagram, but I'm starting to get the feeling that as a millennial, I have overstayed my welcome. Like that's not where you want to be anymore. But there are definitely things I love about it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I mean I do think about that a lot as like somebody who is often, I'm 24, so I'm Gen Z technically, but I really kind of feel like I'm on the cusp of both. And there's a lot of people who like make TikToks, and I'm guilty of this sometimes too, where they make that part of their identity, like being young or being part of Gen Z and being like, oh, I'm not a millennial, I'm Gen Z. And I know that eventually is going to come back to bite us. You know what I mean? Because that can only last for, however long. But I often feel like, there are a lot of people who are older on TikTok. And I think it's just about recognizing when you should switch to like another social platform, or even if you're comfortable doing that. So yeah, it's a weird, I just know that that's going to come back. Every millennial joke I make is just going to come back to bite me at some point in the future, but that's all right. I probably deserved it.
I will circle back to that at some point, but I did want to ask a little bit about your education. You studied journalism prior to starting at Morning Brew at USC and graduated in 2020, as if entering the workforce is not disorienting enough. And we've been talking a little bit about it, differences between Gen Z and millennials, and particularly around how we think about work and life. Do you feel like starting your career amidst so much uncertainty has shaped your career outlook? Are you more pessimistic or optimistic on the whole, you think?
Yeah, I actually I've talked about this a lot with people, and I think it's really important because when I was in college, all I wanted to do was work in late night. That is it. I was a journalism major, but I did comedy, and I was part of the comedy nerd theater group in college. And I was like, oh, well, late night is what the combination of those two things is, right? It is news and writing jokes. I applied every year to a late night internship and I never got one. And by the time I was a senior, I was like, I have to go as hard as possible at this. And so I like did this whole thing where I like made a show that was basically just a copy of John Oliver, but about my school. And, you know, when I was graduating, I was like, I gotta find some way to get to work into late night, and maybe I'll spend a few years in journalism and see if I, you know, if that's really what I want to do. And then maybe if I keep up comedy, I could work there. But then the pandemic hit, and it wasn't a matter of like, oh, I need to craft my career path. It was like, I need a job. So, and in that moment, it was like every job opportunity that I had tried to line up over like my 4 years of college was just like, and we were being advised, they were like, do not contact the people who were prospective employers because they are like trying to take care of their families right now, as should you. And I was like, fair. So I graduated, and my big thing, I was like, I just finished 4 years of school. I gotta have a job. I was like, I can't go back home. I'm from Massachusetts originally. And I was like, something about just like flying back home after those 4 years and like not having anything. I was like, I gotta find something. So I had, and I'm sorry, it's a long answer, but
No.
was applying to anything. And I had this running list. It was like 80 jobs that I got rejected from. It was like this big old spreadsheet of just like red. And these were mostly reporting jobs, but it was like in Anchorage and a place I had no business being a reporter. But eventually somebody told me about Morning Brew. And at the time they were mostly hiring engineers, but they said, you should really check these guys out. They're really ramping up their newsroom. And I was like, sure. And I followed them on LinkedIn. Fast forward about 2 months, I had been freelancing for a website, just doing copy editing and writing, just to like have money. And eventually I saw that Morning Brew was hiring for a podcast host for this daily show that they wanted to do, a daily show style podcast about business. And I was like, oh, you know, maybe I could do this potentially, because I really didn't learn like anything reputable in college. I was a journalism major who liked comedy, but I was like, maybe this could be it. And so I sent in, at the time I was making these TikToks in my college bedroom that were like John Oliver in 60 seconds. And I just like made one for an audition tape. And then like, long story short, Morning Brew was like, hey, this is a podcast. Don't know why you sent us a video, but if you want to come here and do this for us, then we would be down. And so this is all to say that I ended up in a position. And I do think that what I do now is kind of like the modern version of what a late night show does almost. It's just like on a much smaller scale, right? It's like we react to the news of the day. We kind of make fun of it. We have fun with it. And so it made me more open-minded, because it was like proof that, you know, I thought I had a 5-year plan in college. It didn't work out. But in my opinion, it ended up being even better than what I initially wanted, whereas like being like a PA at a late night show where I probably wouldn't get as much creative freedom or the chance to make something every day. So it made me much more open-minded. And now I'm like so hesitant to build a 5-year plan. Now I'm like, that it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out. And I've like settled that I know nothing about the future anytime, always. So yeah, it's definitely made me more open-minded, I think.
Well, you seem to handle it in stride. One of my previous guests on the podcast actually did work in Alaskan Public Radio for a while as one of her gigs. So, you know, if you fall on hard times, I might be able to make an introduction.
That would be sweet, dude. I was so down. I was so down to do it too. I think that they were like, oh, this kid is desperate for a job. Like, that's why he's applying here. But I genuinely was like, I would love to do this. Like, this would be great. I would 100% do this for multiple years. And that's where I think like Lester Holt started he started in like in Alaska doing like jazz radio. So,
oh, wow.
So who knows?
That's incredible. Yeah.
It's good. But they always talk about the Alaska to New York pipeline. They're always talking about that.
When you're consuming news, not specifically for work, what does Dan Toomey's news diet look like?
Oh man,
is that too personal of a question?
No. I'm just like, because I know that I consume, just like anybody right now, I consume a very unhealthy amount of media. I'm actually, honestly, you're catching me at a time where I'm trying to dial it back a little bit, just because it was just getting to be like, I think a mix of overwhelming and feeling creatively blocked. And I had been reading a lot on different writers' processes. And a lot of it was just like, yeah, you got to step away at some point and just like breathe. But on average, usually I read The Economist and Bloomberg every morning. Well, this is including my job. Do you not want to hear anything about what I do for my
Oh,
job, or?
I do. Yeah, you can include
Okay.
Morning Brew.
Well,
Yeah.
because it is definitely a part of it, right? Because I
Hmm.
came into business news having had no background in it. So a lot
Hmm.
of like it's really educational for me a lot of the time. I read all the newsletters from Bloomberg, Matt Levine, the 5 things in the morning. I listen to Odd Lots when I go on walks. I try to read like the front pages of the Journal, The Economist, and that's usually for news where I gather pitches throughout the day. I'm subscribed to too many, I was about to swear, but I won't, like way too many newsletters,
Uh-huh.
which of course includes Morning Brew, but not boring. I read Scott Galloway's newsletter. I read the Axios Markets newsletter. This is all, it all sounds like I accomplish all these every single day. I don't.
Hmm.
It's really just kind of like jumping around. I'd say Matt Levine's is really consistent. And then if you count Twitter as consuming news, I'm on Twitter all day. But for like where I get my favorite articles from, it's usually either Substacks from people that I know, and I know they're really smart people, like Kyla Scanlon is one of them. Joey, I've never said his last name out loud, but I think it's like Politano. He has a great newsletter as well. They're both more economics focused. And then I also like, I feel like it's so stereotypical to like Atlantic articles, but I'm such a I love them. I can't get enough. I
Yeah.
love Atlantic articles because they feel like they capture the whole story. Derek Thompson is like one of my favorite writers of the Atlantic. So it's a mix of just reading all of this throughout the day and then occasionally listening to podcasts, but I prefer reading an article to a podcast. So yeah, I'm sorry. This is too much news, by the way. How much do you read a day usually?
Um,
Or like, what's your
m-
news consumption like?
my news consumption is primarily through Twitter. It used to be NPR on the way to work, but my
Mm,
commute doesn't exist anymore. So unfortunately,
yeah.
I haven't really proactively sought out to replace that. I mean, I could go online. I usually will scroll through NPR once in the morning and just see what's happening, but
Yeah.
nothing too in depth. I could definitely be a more proactive.
I mean, I feel like there's just so much now that it's not, you should find one place that you think, actually, no, I'm not going to say that because then somebody's going to be like, I'm going to get my news from one source. I mean, it's a healthy
Yeah,
balance. Just
yeah,
do it to the extent where you feel informed and healthy. I don't know.
yeah.
I'm not going to advise anybody on any of that. That's too much responsibility for me. I just make the TikToks, people.
So let's talk about Morning Brew. 4 million subscribers, profitable since inception, recent acquisition by Insider. What has it been like to be on this sort of rocket ship of a ride with the company since you joined?
Oh man, thank you for saying that, dude. It's like honestly, I mean, we've hired a lot of people since I joined, which has been great, and meeting so many new talented people and seeing how they can like grow the company as well. It's funny. I have really kind of occupied this space in Morning Brew where I've kind of functioned in my own little like silo almost, and I think that it's part of this creator first growth model that we've wanted to follow with hires like, Sijin Ojulu and Anish Mitra and Money with Katie and Excel Dictionary, Jack Appleby. I just list them off like we're the Avengers. But yes, that's all of us, I think. And it's a lot of it is what you see with other media companies right now, where they're investing in personalities first and people first, because modern media looks more like influencers rather than this oligarch like platform. And that's been interesting to see. And it's been encouraging to see as somebody who started off at this company, really, where it was me and our social editor and one other head of content. And that was our whole video team. That was our whole social
Hmm.
team pretty much. And we just like started making stuff from there. So in terms of growth, it's been great to see other people like be able to conform to that model or work with it and bring their own perspective to it and their own voice to it as well. And also, I don't know, man. It's like fun. Like I'm not
Hmm.
gonna lie. There have been moments where you do feel the pressure of like, okay, we got to keep growing because we're out in front of people now and we're proving that we are here to bat with the big dogs. So we got to make sure that we can like pull our own weight. So there is it's like a motivator to, it's like if you want to be considered part of the Bloombergs, part of the Wall Street Journals, part of the CNBCs, you got to make sure that you can put up quality, I'm trying so
Yeah.
hard not to swear, and I hope you realize
Oh,
that I
you're
curse
welcome to
way too
swear
much.
if you would
Oh,
like
okay.
to.
You got to make sure your shit's good, dude. I don't know. Like you have to be able to put up quality work, and if you don't, then people won't take you seriously. But I think that we've managed to do that over the past year, while also having moments where we've experimented and been like, okay, that didn't work, and moving on. But
Mhm.
It's been exciting, and it's been a massive learning process throughout the whole year and a half that I've been here so far.
This interview is brought to you by TeuxDeux. You're juggling a lot and you don't know where to start. We've all been there. And that's why we made TeuxDeux with the core belief that less is more. TeuxDeux is the minimalist to-do list app to ease your cognitive burdens. We are the most refreshing task manager in a sea of monster energy drinks. No pings, no feeds, no comments, just you and the things you need to get done in a simple, intuitive interface. Use code SomedayList for 20% off when you subscribe at TEUXDEUX.com. Back to the interview. So as the company grows, do you think it'll begin to look more like a traditional media outlet, or do you think more traditional media outlets are going to start taking cues from what Morning Brew is doing?
I think some already have, to an extent. I mean, a lot of people joined. Like, we were not the first outlet on TikTok, right? But a lot of outlets joined TikTok after. A lot of business outlets joined TikTok after we did. But you could extend that back to WAPO, right? So I think that we're all kind of changing together, and I'm viewing this from a video standpoint, right? Like, my focus is video platforms, but we're not even talking about all of the newsletters that we've dropped since. And I think that in a weird way, and honestly, Austin could probably answer this better than me because he's been here since the jump. I only joined a year and a half ago, but I think a lot of media companies are learning from what Morning Brew is not doing right now, but what they've done over the last 7 years, which
Mhm.
is scale newsletters effectively. And now, like, we are investing in creators heavily, which some other platforms, some other news companies are doing. But it's weird. It feels more of just like a blending rather than like we did it first and they're copying us. It's just kind of like, I think we're all reacting to the changes that we're seeing. That really starts with the audience and the people who are making stuff too. But in terms of newsletters, I think Morning Brew is probably at the earlier side of that. But that's probably a prediction that I shouldn't be making since I think I was in high school. So so that's probably not I wasn't subscribed to too many business newsletters in high school. I was in like a production of Guys and Dolls by the time Morning Brew started. So I shouldn't say anything. You're
From the
good.
very jump, seeing your work on the Morning Brew TikTok, I was like, oh, this guy for sure has done sketch, improv. And I was
Yeah.
like, he's definitely a theater kid. I could tell as a theater kid myself. I was
Yeah,
like, this
man.
guy
Oh,
definitely
you're a
did
theater
theater.
kid? What did
I
you do? What did
was.
you do in high school?
I was guest on in a production of Beauty and the Beast. Fake muscles, fake chest hair, and everything.
Hell yeah,
It
dude.
was a
That's
good
the way
time.
to go. Yeah, everybody always remembers their high school theater productions. That's why I'm dressed like I'm in a high school. It's just
Like you're
all
part of the crew. Yeah.
yeah, it's like that SNL sketch. You ever seen that one where it's like the experimental theater group? I feel like that right
That's
now.
what I
I feel
did
like
in
that
high
right
school.
now.
We had a small like sketch. It was a social issue theater troupe, but it was
Hell
a good
yeah,
time.
man.
Some of my oldest friends are from that.
We solved a lot of problems in our social issue theater, didn't we? World's
Yes,
a
we
better
sure
place
did.
now.
So you were brought on to work on video and kind of explore what that looked like for Morning Brew.
Yeah.
You've kind of hit your stride with these short form sketches that you do. You have the new sketch series that's on YouTube, Good Work. I'm curious, were there any earlier experiments or explorations that didn't work out as well?
Yeah, man. The first video I ever made was a 16-minute John Oliver. So this is the setting, right? When I joined
Uh-huh.
Morning Brew, I was living in DC in an apartment probably about half this size, and I was tasked with making our first video. And I had this lighting setup that I brought from college that was like way too big. And I was like, I'm going to make a 16-minute investigative John Oliver style monologue. And it was about why Tesla had Bitcoin on their balance sheet, which is like so on, like too on brand. And my room was so small that I had to put my mattress, which did not have a bed frame, I put the mattress onto the wall. I lifted it up and I put it on the wall, and I moved my desk to the middle of the room. And then I put up my lighting setup, filmed this whole thing, edited it down to 16 minutes. We put it on Instagram of all places, and
Uh-huh.
no one watched it because why would they? but like at the time I was like, okay, I'm gonna come out strong and this is what I'm gonna do for my first thing ever. So nobody watched that. We did another one that was shorter, but nobody watched it again because it was like 5 minutes. And then we were promoting as a promotion for another like kind of monologue style video that was explaining the different stages of a startup. We made a TikTok that was, it was a little sketch that was like the stages of a startup going from seed to, an IPO. And that video that we put on TikTok to promote a different video got like 500,000 views or something like that. The actual video was like garbage. Like nobody saw it. So we were like, oh, this is what we should be doing. And I've said this a lot, but like the kind of the philosophy that we've abided by is like we're down to try anything, but we only repeat what works. So there's a lot of experimentation and encouraging to be creative, but at the same time, it's like if we know that we have a hit, we want to try it like a few more times. Not to the extent where we like exhaust ourselves and people only know us as the outlet that does like this one type of comedy video. But we definitely, there were some early experiments that were definitely not the direction that we should have been in at the time, but we learned a lot from it. And those are valuable in their own right,
Yeah. Is there anything that you would want to take a crack at again? Any of those earlier ideas or things that you still want to try at Morning Brew?
There are some things that I still want to try. I don't know if I want to give them all away yet because I still want to try them. But in terms of like, we have a bunch of ideas that I want to give a go at for Good Work. And, I still feel like for that show, we're finding our footing as well. It is not really a YouTube-y style show. Like it's kind of filmed more like a TV show, but shorter. And, and look, like, I would love for it to blow up and have millions of views in day two, but we're still building up our YouTube channel. So there's a lot. I think we're still very much in the early innings with our YouTube channel as well. I'm really proud of the episodes that we've done so far. But there's like, I'm sure like as a like a creative, this, but there are like so many things that I want to do that we just don't have the time to do yet. And I'm really excited about those. So that's where my head is right now.
Good Work is the new sketch series on YouTube. They're 4 to 5 minutes as opposed to the minute and a half that you do on Instagram and TikTok. Do you find that you like writing for one format over the other?
I kind of like both. One of my life goals, I'd say like long term, is to write for television. I really enjoy writing for Good Work because it is closer to like these are actual scripts that we're writing that are formatted like scripts. And that's great because I just enjoy having that be part of my job and being able to practice it consistently and get better at it. What I like about writing for, TikToks and Reels is that you kind of treat them like short stories almost, where you can take massive swings with a concept and you don't really have to explain everything that's going on. And people kind of enjoy that. Like you can get crazy and weird. You're supposed to kind of get crazy and weird, or you have freedom to, and people will be very forgiving. And it's the same thing with like a short story where you can just like introduce this wild concept and then just kind of close it in 2 to 3 pages. And like people will enjoy that, hopefully. Whereas Good Work is definitely like more of a challenge sometimes, but we have people on our staff that I collaborate with, and it's just more of like a challenge, I would say. And again, for somebody who wants to write scripts for a living in the future, this is just like a closer step to that. So I've enjoyed that as well.
It's kind of like a life hack almost, that you've just turned what you love to do, your personal hobby. You love comedy, you do it outside Morning Brew as well, just bringing it into the workplace. I was wondering, what does when you're pitching that to your editors, what does that pitch look like? Because I imagine they want to vet an idea based on more than just the comedic, how funny something is. How did the idea come about?
It was actually kind of like how we approach a lot of the different creator projects now, is that again, I started as just like the video person, but I've kind of become now like what they would call a creator. And I think with each of us, we've like sat down with our editors in Morning Brew and they've been like, okay, what are your strengths? Like what are you clearly good at, and what do you want to gravitate more towards, and where can we like put your energy to where you're most enjoying it and where you're the best? And for me, that's like sketch comedy, writing comedy. And from there, they're like, okay, well, what can we do with that? Like, we're not gonna put you on like a panel at Bloomberg because that would just be horrible for everyone involved. I was like, it'd be great if I could just like do a sketch show if you guys are down for that. And they were like, sure, but let's talk about what that is. So I was like, fair. So from there, we gradually developed what the show is. And again, we're still figuring it out, I think, but that was kind of how the original pitch came about. They're like, okay, what are you good at? How can we scale that up and put it on one of our platforms? And for me, like the inevitable next step just seemed like to make a sketch show. And shouts out to Sarah Singer and everybody else and all the producers who were like, sure, we'll let you do that for some reason. So that's how that came about. Yeah.
So you put out an incredible amount of content at a relentless pace, and it's all
Oh,
very funny, high quality.
thank you. It doesn't feel like that. I'll be honest with you. It doesn't feel like that at all. If anybody is listening and they're like, they also make stuff, I feel like there is a pressure to make just stuff every single day. It used to be for us that we made something I would make a video every day at one point, and like Washington Post does that too. But at a certain point, it actually became beneficial to not do one every day because you get more time on a certain video. But there is still like, you see somebody posting something on Twitter, or you see like somebody else do something, and you're like, I gotta get back. I gotta do something. So I appreciate you saying that because it doesn't feel like that all the time.
How do you structure your time and protect it? One, for your own mental well-being, and then also for your creative well-being. I imagine it's hard to generate as many ideas as you do.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say a big part of it is leaning on people that you trust and that you can toss around ideas with. In addition to Morning Brew, I put videos on my own Instagram, and a lot of those ideas come from me just like kicking it with like friends or my brother. And we just talk about like what would be funny. And sometimes like the urge to make something off of an idea is like so much that you're like, I have to do this. I will spend my Saturday or my Sunday doing this video because I just really want it to be out there. And it's fun too. In terms of like structuring my day, it's varied since Good Work has entered the picture. I made it sound like a child. It has changed because Good Work is so different. Like I have spent multiple hours today editing our last video. Probably a year ago, my whole job would just be to make a TikTok for today and then move on and then do the same thing for tomorrow and just rinse and repeat. So now it's like we have a cadence of 2 to 3 videos a week from me while editing these larger scripts for Good Work. And we have another interview show called Office Politics. But to be able to keep up that cadence, I'd say one, you really have to just like what you do. Fortunately, I really do. And that makes it easier, I think, to keep going back to it, because this is the stuff that I was doing in my free time when I wasn't working at Morning Brew. So that's part of it. But in terms of like creative exhaustion, I think it's really important to recognize when you're burnt out. And I have not been great at that. I really have not. I've had people who have had to tell me that I am clearly burnt out and that I have had to take steps back and be like, okay, you're right. Because it's one of those things where mentally you're like, I need to keep going. And if I don't have an idea now, I'll just like sit back at my desk, I'll write out 50 ideas and one of those will be good. But if you're in a state of being burnt out and you think when your sensor is louder than the part of you that's enthusiastic about making something, none of it's going to be good. And it is hard to pull yourself away. But when you do, even just like a day or two or a weekend where you're like, I'm not going to try to write anything this weekend, I am just going to take this time for myself. Then you get back and you're like, oh, wow, I'm in a much better headspace than I was previously. Therefore, my ideas are just better and more fun because I'm actually having fun with it again. So it's a mix of like leaning on people for inspiration, because a lot of the best ideas come from you just, again, kicking it with people that you normally joke around with. And then also self-care, which I'm not always the best at, but I'm learning, and I'm relying on people for that. I mean, I don't know. What's it for you? What do you usually rely on? Because you create a lot of content as well. You're doing a podcast. You're also you have drawings. Like, don't you have a newsletter too?
I started one briefly in the midst of the pandemic. I think my thing is when I get burnt out on one thing, I just throw myself into another thing and then work furiously at that. But yeah, it's something, I definitely also have to work at. My wife is with the cartooning for the New Yorker and stuff. She's, she'll often tell me like, if you're not enjoying this, no, you don't have to do it.
Then there's a little voice inside of you that's like, but I do have to do it. And people are like, why? Like, you psychopath. And you're like, but I must.
Yeah. It's what I think one of the laziest forms of comedy, writing a sentence or two with a quick little doodle. And are you kidding me, dude? I still procrastinate.
You know how many rejections I've gotten from the New Yorker caption? Every time I've put it in there, I've never made it. So it's hard, man. I don't like, that's not easy, dude. That's very difficult. I think sometimes coming up with like the most concise stuff is even harder than just like writing like a 4-paragraph or, a 5-page Substack where like one sentence is good.
Yeah. I think that's what I enjoy about making content online, like TikTok, is like the exercise in practicing brevity brevity's the soul of wit, or whatever that saying is, and really cutting things down and getting rid of everything superfluous. You've sort of started to answer this question already with how much the ultimate dream is for you to work in late night. If you had to guess what your magnum opus will be 5, 10 years, 20 years down the line, do you think it will be fully in the world of comedy, or do you think it will be at this intersection of news and comedy?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because like the first thing I said when I joined here was like, I have no idea what's going to happen in my life, man. So who knows? I might. I would love to have an answer, but again, if I could just do what I do today, but at a larger scale in the future, like, okay, here's my ideal career path right now. Again, this is all open to change because it did last time, and I ended up pretty okay. That's news to anybody who's like ever worried about the future. But if I could be writing for a show, like ideally on FX or like HBO, would be incredible because that's where my favorite stuff usually comes from. Because I'm a annoying film boy. That would be if that could be like my main projects that I work on. That would be ideal. While also, I think having this capacity to upload stuff just on my socials that are like quick videos, just because those are sometimes where the most fun ideas can go that really don't have like a place anywhere else. And what I love about that world is that you're able to collaborate with people really casually. And again, just like put these little ideas out where you don't have to submit it to like a publisher to like see if it gets accepted. Like I can't tell you how many rejections I've gotten from humor websites for like little tiny articles that I've spent hours on. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, this wasn't really worth it. Whereas like you just put it on the internet and there it is, So the combination of writing scripts, hopefully acting and stuff, and also just uploading things to my own personal, whether it be about the news or just like a regular story, I think would be my ideal life situation over the next 10 years. But that would be, I'm already very blessed to be in the position that I am now. So that would just be, amazing in my opinion.
You're not just exploring comedy at Morning Brew right now. Outside of it, you are doing improv and stand up. Are there certain things comedically right now that are really fun to you that might not be sketch?
Yeah. So right now I should be doing more, but I've been doing stand up in New York. Seeing how social media has impacted the stand up and open mic world in New York is so interesting to me. And there are a lot of ways, but I also want to write a script about it, so I shouldn't say too much.
Okay,
but
fair enough.
But it's fascinating because there are so many people in it now who were able to get a platform on social media that it has, and then they're like, okay, well, the next inevitable step is to go to New York and to be a stand-up comedian, which is fascinating because one, that might not be necessary for a lot of people, but it's also great to see people out there and really challenging themselves in a completely different way because it is so different than making videos online. Like it is really like almost another art form. And it's so challenging. And it's been interesting to see the stand-up crowd and that kind of like video content creator crowd mix and see what comes out of it. And it's been tough, dude. I like, I hit open mics consistently. I'm not nearly as good as a lot of the people that I hang out with, but I meet a lot of other stand-up comedians through that process. And they've become really great friends since I've been here. And they're super encouraging too. My like initial thought when I first moved to New York was that people are going to be like, you think you can do stand up here in New York City? Like, you're not gonna, you get out of here, you piece of shit. And like, just throw a hot dog at your face or something. But a lot of the comedians that I've worked with have been some of like the nicest, most giving and caring people. So that's, I think, been a really fun element to it. It's just like this whole new friend group that you develop. You're gonna like look this up later and talk to other stand-up comedians. You'll be like, "Oh, Dan Toomey, I hate that kid. Like he's the worst." But no, it's been humbling and it's been a blast. So yeah, that's like. And then I go to like improv jams and just the amount of shows that are here. That's one thing. Like there are so many shows that I want to go to throughout the whole week, but you do get choice paralysis often, where you're like, do I write a humor article? Do I go to a show tonight? Do I practice stand up? Do I do improv? Like, which is great because there are so many outlets, but you can definitely freeze at some point and really not know like what the best direction is. So yeah. It's still been fun though.
I mean, I really admire that openness to trying and exploring everything and this fearlessness of failure. I'm sure
who said that?
I'm sure it's still uncomfortable, but
who said fearlessness of failure, dude? I think it's weird. It's like But I get what you're saying, right? It's kind of like that voice that we talked about earlier, the one that's just like, you have to do this. Like that voice doesn't come without a fear of failure. I think that you're often scared of failing in whatever medium you kind of put your heart into, which is what art is at the end of the day. Not saying that what I do is art, but it is there's certainly the anxiousness of like, oh, this might not go over well, but oftentimes the payoff from it all will make up for that, you know? So I think that sometimes there's this like misconception where people are just like, oh, like these comics who get up there, they're just fearless. Like they just get up there and do that. Where it's like, no, oftentimes I feel like it's like going to the gym where you're just like, this is going to suck. Don't want to do it. And then like after you're just like, oh, wow, I actually feel better now. So that's, you know, in my mind, that's often what it comes down to.
That's definitely a much better way to frame it, is just a willingness to try it and comfort with it, just acknowledging that it's going to be unpleasant, but still trying it anyways.
I do think that whenever I have been anxious about putting myself out there more, oftentimes the product of that has been good for me. And I think that you can become very isolated in this job where you're just like, I'm just going to stay inside and make my little videos. And like, that's, I don't know how healthy that is. So through doing stand up and through doing improv, ironically, it's actually been like a healthy experience because you're just like, wow, I'm out here in the world, like actually like doing something. And you become a better writer and stuff like that through it all too. So I'm saying this from the perspective of somebody who's like an accomplished comedian, which like I'm not at all, dude. I'm like doing open mics. I had a dude fall asleep on me at an open mic the other day. He was asleep and I had to wake him up. So
but you're out there doing it, which is what I really admire.
Oh, thank you, man.
I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. I don't want to take up too much of
your
day.
This is a blast, dude. This is a blast. I really appreciate it. As you know, I'm a big fan of yours. This is our first time meeting, so I'm glad that we could do this.
I do have 2 pitches I want to run by you, though.
Wait. I have so many, actually. I'm going to do that if that's okay.
Oh, yeah. Feel free to email me. But this is not for the New Yorker, but if you ever do take a crack at the Morning Brew, a late night show again, calling it Evening Brew with Dan Toomey, I don't know if that's just low hanging fruit. And then my second pitch for you is this reference might date me, but a remake of the 1997 film Face Off, starring you and Jack Corbett from NPR's Planet Money, their TikTok.
Jack's way too talented. I don't even know what happens in that movie, but people would. What happens in that movie?
I think he assumes the identity of Nick Cage or vice versa, or one or the other.
Oh, dude, whatever challenge it is, Jack would definitely beat me. That kid is, I mean, I think he's like a year older than me, but he's just like, he's absolutely incredible. So yeah, the 1990s remake that I'll do is Mystery Science Theater 3000. I want to do that, but just narrating like Jim Cramer episodes. So I can commit to that.
Yeah, you should pitch that to Morning Brew. I think that would go over well.
Yeah, this is a live pitch.
Thank you so much for being here. Where can our listeners find you online?
They can find me flooding their For You pages at the Morning Brew TikTok, and they can also find me at DH2Me on every social platform. So Instagram, Twitter, and I also have a secret handle on Medium, but I'm not going to reveal what that is.
That'll do it for this episode of Someday List. We will catch you next time. Thank you again, Dan.
It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Someday List. We'll have new episodes for you every month, so make sure to follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or follow along on social media at TeuxDeux app on Instagram or Asked To Do on Twitter. This podcast is produced by TeuxDeux. Our theme music is composed by Evan Laybourne. I want to thank our guest Dan Toomey for coming on again. And of course, thank you, the listener. We'll catch you next time.